Welcome everybody to my Thursday chess stream here on lichess and Twitch. I am William Paschall. This is Blitz and Classical Chess, playing with the viewers anytime control between 5 minutes and 3 second increment and 8 minutes and 3 second increment. You guys can feel free to challenge me to any time control in that range. We prefer the longer increments, the 5 second increments, for the shorter games, like 5 minutes. And if it's a longer game, 7 or 8 minutes, you can just challenge me to with a game with a 3 second increment. So welcome, it's Thursday, December 1st, 2016. It's kind of like the US presidential election, you know, we're just glad the World Championship is over, you know. Really just painful to watch, and happy that it's done with. Happy to see that Magnus is still technically the World Championship. Still the World Champion. I'm really like a big believer that the World Champion should like have draw odds. I guess because it's a tradition, but it's kind of like boxing, you know. I mean, you need to beat the champ to like get the title, you know, to win the title belt. So, in my view, this whole concept of going to rapid tiebreaks probably is kind of a little generous to the challenger. But in any case, Carlsen took it down. If you guys see the puzzle of the day on lichess, that's actually the final position, almost the final position from the Carlsen Karyakin fourth rapid game. So Magnus won the third game in rapid, and then it was actually kind of sad what happened. He had the tiny advantage, and Karyakin was constantly in time pressure and blundered in game 3, and probably what was a drawn position. But that's what Magnus does to you. That's what he did to me. He got like a huge time advantage in rapid chess, you know, and one guy has like 15 minutes and the other guy has like 5 minutes all the time. Eventually you're going to make a mistake. So Magnus kept the World Championship, and that's over, and we're glad. King Wiki, Constant Change, Hunt the King, and Acid Passes are challenging me. So we're going to get on with it here. Online Wiki, good evening over here. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. You're in Australia, right? So in any case, we're just glad to move on from the World Championship. King Wiki, we're going to start with you. It's 8-3. Good evening, indeed. No weird openings today. We're just going to play our normal stuff. I'm kind of waking up, so I'm going to play knight f3. That's my default move when I'm not really awake yet. b6. While not a great move in my opinion against e4, I think b6 is much more reasonable against knight f3. White has less options if I want to play like an e4 type of Owen's defense. Still, e4 is probably the best move for white, but it's not as dangerous because my knight's committed to f3. Obviously, you can do that. You can play c5. So come to think of it, I mean, you know, you can play d4 here. There's some argument for that. But in that case, black plays bishop b7, and it's still not easy for white to get really an advantage. Alright, so we go into one of these weird Sicilians with b6. Christian Bauer, the French grandmaster, who plays b6 a lot, actually also plays the Sicilian with c5 and b6. So I guess we'll have to consult him for a theoretical reference for this opening. I don't really know much theory here. So, I mean, it's kind of like a Khan Sicilian or something like that. Honestly, I was never really attracted to playing this for black because, you know, without the ability to play b5, it just doesn't feel like the Sicilian to me. It's always possible to do a kind of hedgehog setup, though. I think that's pretty much what black should aim for. You know, like e6, b6, d6, a6, bishop b7, knight d7. He goes with the double fianchetto here. That's, I'm sure, quite unusual, but nevertheless looks viable. Now I might as well, we're going to go into a Marazzi here. This is not probably the most critical against this double fianchetto type defense, but as I said earlier, I just woke up and I'm not feeling very tactically competent in the first hour when I wake up, basically. So somebody made a comment when I was watching the when I was watching the end of the Carlsen match, I noticed the viewer make this comment that why does it seem like faster time controls, like the rapid chess, are always more tactical than slower games, you know? And I thought this is kind of typical, you know. Actually, there's a reason for that, because tactics are easier, you know, than strategic chess. That's the answer. Tactics you can find very quickly. Strategic chess takes time. You know, it really takes a lot of thought and a lot of time. And that's why it's hard for a player like me, who's more strategic than tactical, I think, you know, to play a long game. I use all my time. Very tactical players don't need quite as much time. And I think tactics are easier to find than strategic plans. So anyway, I'm just kind of bantering here, but I think the simple answer, you know, in fast time controls, tactics rule, because tactics you can find quickly. They can control the game. There's no time for like long, sophisticated maneuvering and stuff like that. So it's hard to play really sophisticated positional games with like 30 minutes or less. Whereas tactics are easy to find. A lot of players can find tactical ideas like instantaneously. Okay, so now d6 we have a kind of cross between a Marazzi and the Khan Sicilian. He hasn't played e6 though. It's a bit weird. Anyway, I'll probably play f3 at some point to secure the pawn on e4. It's a hybrid type of position. I don't see anything special I can do. Now black's maybe threatening knight g4. So I don't see any really aggressive setup for white here. I'm just going to go into a rather standard. I mean, I guess you could play f3, bishop, put the bishop on d3, but I don't really see the benefit in that. So it's a Dragendorf. Some players, the hybrid between the Najdorf and the Dragon was popular for a while. Call it Dragendorf or Dragon. That's what this looks like. But it's really, in reality, just it's just a Marazzi where black played b6 now. An absolutely standard hyper-accelerated or accelerated dragon where black played b6 instead of like the more typical knight to c6. So this is a position I should be pretty familiar with. Constant Change, Vasham Chess, Asi Passes Online Wiki. Thanks guys for joining me here. It's Thursday. So double fianchetto in the Marazzi is a variation that exists in theory. And I think this position is completely playable for black. Again, I probably had some kind of sharper setup I could try. But I'm just waking up. And alright, so the pain of the World Championship is over with. I didn't want to see any kind of like silly thing where somebody upsets the World Championship in blitz chess or something, but I thought if it got to blitz, it gets more and more random. So Carlsen put it away in the rapid, basically because of his speed. He didn't really outplay Karyakin. Karyakin just blundered in an equal position because he had like 1 minute and Carlsen had like 5. And he sort of panicked and overlooked like a very, very major threat and lost. Position he could have easily held if he had a little bit more time. And in the last game, Karyakin lost because he played the Sicilian, desperately trying to win with black in a must-win situation. But, you know, that's not really, in a sense, like a win for Carlsen. I mean, Karyakin had to go crazy. You know, no draw is no good, so... But in any case, I had the feeling that Magnus would take him out in rapid because he's just too fast and he just plays very, very practically. Maybe not the strongest player ever in history, but he's the most practical great player in history. So what's on tap for December now, chess-wise? Weekend Z is coming up. Where's our faithful moderator here? Groningen is starting pretty soon. A lot of tournaments, Christmas holiday time. It's also, well, in January is Gibraltar. I wanted to play in Gibraltar, but the entries were like filled up. I didn't realize that tournament gets like totally filled up 2 months before the event. The pleasure is mine, sir. Black, you're just hanging your d6 pawn here. You have to play knight e8, I believe. It's not really pleasant, but I don't think I can actually win that pawn. In a sense, I almost wonder if it wasn't a mistake to play knight b5, but probably not. Anyway, thank you for the generous offer. Shall we take with the knight or take with the queen? Or not take it all? Yeah, I mean, I guess we just take with the knight. It gains a tempo on the bishop. So, actually, the last game of the Rapids between Carlsen and Karyakin was a same structure, ironically. Black had a backward d6 pawn and a kind of like Kalashnikov or something. And poor Karyakin never got any threats. And then Carlsen did this devastating mate to him at the end. It was a cool way to end the match, and that's the puzzle of the day here on lichess. So King Wiki panicking. He's not hanging any pieces, just a pawn, so I wouldn't give up yet. But knight e8, you know, I mean, it's a sort of standard move you have to play a lot of times in the Sicilian, previous move, that is. It's a move you have to play in the Sicilian, it's a move you have to play in the King's Indian very often. This retreating Benoni, you know, defending the d6 pawn. I don't have any way to increase the pressure on d6, you're going to kick me out. So, I mean, I think your position is playable. Now, this is a good question about this bishop on b7. Want to simply take that? Well, there's the threat of like rook to d8, and he starts to put some pressure on me along the file, so it's probably simplest to take this pawn. Not necessarily pawn. Pawn! It's a sort of Freudian slip. But take the pawn on b7. Yeah. What's my plan here other than just being a pawn up? I want to complete my development. We could not take the pawn and let it move to like bishop c6 or something, but what do I do in the interim? Taking the pawn is simplest. I'm a little concerned about black getting control of d4, like knight c5, knight e6, knight d4. But other plans are very awkward. Maybe queen d2, followed by rook to d1. If he plays bishop c6, it's probably simplest just to take this. I'm a clear pawn up, and I'm not looking for any kind of complications in this situation. So queen e1, queen h4. My queen needs a place to go. Although I could just put a knight on d5. Queen a4, queen a4. Problem is knight to c5. The problem. b4 is interesting. A little risky. I don't have too much time here. Alright, well, it's risky to cross the street, but get hit by a bus at any moment. I mean, this is thematic. I have a queenside majority. I'd also like to, you know, create a pass pawn. I'd like to maybe play c5 and give my bishop some squares, keeping the knight off of c5, getting a place for my queen where it's sort of shielded on b3. I mean, I think b4 is a fairly normal move. Just, there's a tendency when you're up a pawn to not want to do anything. This is actually the same theme as yesterday. Carlsen and Karyakin, the last game, all Carlsen needs to do is like draw in this type of structure, and he was like, I'm sure he wanted to play aggressively in a way, but at the same time, he was kind of like restricted by the fact that he has absolutely no reason to take any risks. So it was kind of an odd scenario. It's always an odd scenario to find yourself like in this like draw odds situation. You want to play aggressively, but you know that you don't have any reason to take any risks. So it's kind of like, why do I play with risk here? Pawn up. Any ending should be winning for white. I honestly thought like maybe a5 would have been a good try, just to try to open up the a file, but this is kind of like, again, maybe I'm having... Oh, I had a very good move there. I totally overlooked tactics. One move tactics. Yeah, Carlsen. Karyakin, I'm having memories of the game from yesterday. It was the same theme where Karyakin did a5 and he opened the a file. I also play a lot of games with black in the Marazzi, so a5 and open the a file. It's kind of standard sort of source of counterplay for black, except like usually this diagonal is open for the bishop on g7. The fact that black's played e5 here, you know, he doesn't have the kind of counterplay on the long diagonal he might otherwise. Overlook this last move. Check. Always check, it might be mate. The favorite saying of some really weak chess hustlers. Knight takes c8. So we're streaming every day, Monday to Friday, here from 10 to 12:30 in the morning, Central European time. Rook on fd1, and we're up the exchange and a pawn. This should be over. But you never ever count your chickens till they hatch. I was waiting for like Carlsen to hang a piece and like the match to go to a blitz playoff. But not really typical for Carlsen to hang things. He's incredibly consistent on fd1. But overall, I was impressed by Karyakin. You know, tying the match 6-6. But it makes you wonder, you know, if like Karyakin's number 5 in the world or whatever, like what would a Caruana or a Kramnik do in a long match? And I also was thinking that it's not the fact that the time controls have gotten faster. I mean, this is not the reason why Magnus Carlsen is like world champion. He's a great player, but he's not a brilliant player. Like, in some sense, he's just kind of like a routine player, it feels like. Very, very fast, very practical, but, you know, not brilliant in the way like Fischer or Kasparov was. And I just wonder, I mean, what would happen if we like went back in time and changed the time control back to like the longer time controls, you know? Because like Carlsen, look at Carlsen, he can't even beat Karyakin in regular chess. I mean, what would he do with like Kramnik or Caruana? And, you know, is it possible he could even like be an underdog in like really long time control? I'm gonna go for this. f7. So, no, my point is, like, what would happen if we had, like, 40 minutes for, 40 moves in 2 hours, or 2.5 hours, like the really old World Championship matches? What would happen? Would Carlsen still be world champion if we made the time control back to, like, a really old school time control? Or is Carlsen just, you know, in this faster 90 minutes for 2 hours? Is that, like, his, like, bread and butter kind of? I feel like this is, like, Carlsen's time, this 90 minutes for 40 moves. Is moving toward the Carlsen time control. So constant change. What would Kramnik do, you know, in a long match, a 24-game match with like 40 moves in 2 hours or longer against the Carlsen? Maybe Kramnik could even take him out. In rapid chess, like nobody seems to have a chance. You know, I think it's just over. Anything between like 30 and 90 minutes, and it seems like, you know, there's no time to play like a really, really deep strategic game. With 90 minutes, it feels like chess has been cheapened by the faster time controls. I mean, you're not going to write a tournament book about this World Championship. Constant change, good luck. Are we gonna? Is anybody gonna? Some idiot out there is gonna like write a book about like the Carlsen Karyakin encounter. You know, I mean, people just want to make money, and chess authors. Somebody's gonna be brave enough to like do this thing where they actually write a tournament book about this garbage. But it's like, you know, 12 games at 90 minutes. I mean, it's not real World Championship chess. They're great players, and I respect them, but still, come on. It's nothing like the old school World Championships. So that's my question. What would happen? Would Carlsen still be world champion? Probably he could hang on, but I don't know. It would certainly be interesting. If Karyakin can tie it at 90 minutes time control. No, 100 minutes. I'm sorry. It's 100 minutes. They made it longer. It's very generous. Instead of the normal 90 minutes, 100 minutes. I'm sorry, but it feels the same to me. But if the old school time control were in effect, and it was like a Caruana or Kramnik, someone even stronger than Karyakin, I wonder. We'll have to wait till next time. But rapid chess is just game over, man. Magnus is unstoppable in 30 minutes. This is the only prediction I've been right about in a long time. That Magnus would be even stronger at rapid chess than he is in normal. Alright, so, but it was really even time related. Karyakin really didn't get outplayed per se, even in the rapid chess, just needed more time. Carlsen has shown even longer time controls he can be great. This month he really didn't play at his best. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can't really judge anybody by one event. I still think that his entire dominance is partly enhanced by the making time controls faster. Okay, Queen A5. He's a great player, obviously. Queen A5, Knight D5, Queen takes D2, Knight takes E7 check. Have I been here before? You could play like Rook C8, I guess. Queen A5, Knight D5, Queen takes D2, Knight takes E7 check, King H8, Rook takes D2, Knight takes E4. This is getting a little complicated. Bishop takes G7 check, King takes G7, Rook D4. That's pretty complicated. But the knight is trapped on E7, no? Online Wiki says, I believe a world champion is good in all formats, so having a set amount, blitz, rapids, and then classical chess, part of the world championship makes more sense. Well, it's an interesting perspective. But, you know, there's a lot of people who think that there should be like 3 different titles, you know, like a title of the world rapid champion, a world blitz champion, and I think I'm down with that, you know, but it's really, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's really a matter of taste. So A3 and B5 is possible. But the thing is, if I do get like B5, B4, let's say B5, bishop takes B5, knight takes E4, knight takes E4, queen takes B5. I could also prepare it with like rook and A to B8, rook FC8. I mean, rook FC8 is probably kind of a standard move here. This type of position, negating all those creepy tactics with like knight to D5. Standard setup. This position, by the way, guys, is very similar to, you know, it's very similar to the normal, like, dragon, where white is playing F3 with a bishop on F1. That's like a theoretical line. So instead of having F3 as bishop E2. So now constant change reaches this boring ending where honestly I think black has, I don't know, maybe it's just dead even, but I don't know why. I guess I'm just biased. I feel like the e4 pawn is a little bit weak theoretically, but I guess I'm just mostly biased toward black here. I guess it should be considered objectively equal. One problem with playing the dragon, like, I guess this is true in all openings when you're black, but like in the King's Indian, white can play the exchange variation. There are sort of bailout variations like white can play that are kind of very drawish. And this idea of an early knight d5, I think you can go back to like when Anand played Kasparov in the World Championship match, whenever that was, like when was it, 95 or I don't remember, in New York. Kasparov surprised Anand with a dragon, and Anand in some of those games did play this like really sort of chicken shit kind of knight d5 type of idea sometimes, which was very in the Yugoslav attack, which is really like non-confrontational and not dangerous. So I'm playing g5 here, playing for the good king, and it might be a little bit risky, but there's some ideas to get the king to e5, like a powerful king. In the ending, I'm also restricting f4 type of stuff. Vashram Chess, I mean, you're probably right about the faster time controls favor his practical approach, but I think he's good enough, even with a long time control, he'd easily be in top 3. Yeah, no, I'm just like concerned if anybody can beat him, you know. I think if we, well, I mean, if Karyakin can play the way he did and draw, you know, I mean, Magnus was taking, actually both sides were taking no risks. And that raises another question. Okay, time controls aside, I really, you know, Sarawan says a 13-game match with a, you know, whatever it is, kind of like draw odds game in the 13th game, the lucky 13th. Okay. But 24 games at least, please, you know, because like I said the other day, look why these guys played so like afraid to take any risks at all. Imagine if it's like a 1-game match or a 2-game match. How are they going to play? They're going to like tighten up like rocks, you know, they're not going to take any risks. There's like a continuum, you know. If it's a 100-game match, these guys are going to take risks. They have, you know, a lot of like room to make mistakes and lose a game or two, and you know, if it's a 50-game match, they still have some room to make mistakes. They'll take risks. They'll play interesting chess. But the shorter the match becomes, like the more every single game means, you know. And so they're going to play more and more like, you know, grandparents and not like, you know, young aggressive players. So I think that the shorter match, Yasser doesn't talk about this at all in his little article for chess base, but I'm not sure, you know, that my point isn't valid. That the shorter match lends itself to nobody taking any risks, you know, and this is not what we really want to see from the perspective of spectators. All right, so we've got king e5. The question about the king e5 is, like, maybe my king on e5 can actually come under attack. Instead of king e5, let's improve the rook. I don't know, I just think making the match a little longer wouldn't make it less exciting or boring. You know, it would actually, in fact, make it more exciting. White's pretty solid here. All right, well, let's go for it. I don't think that either side has a great advantage here, but if I had to choose, I like black a tiny bit with the better king. G3 now. I guess we're gonna go for it. So this is not a world championship match. We're gonna go for it. Well, we're not making any progress on the queen side. G4. I expected him to pull the rook back, but it is rather passive to do that. However, here, now there's a debate about whether to play h3 or not. I mean, the thing is, he doesn't want to play h3 and leave his pawn on a white square where my king can like get in there. So we can both kind of wait on that, you know, playing h3 or not h3. Now, it's admittedly going to be real tough to break through here. We have to start a second front, but the queen side. A5, B5. How the heck would I break through? It's possible to play king f4, but what does that do objectively? I don't know. It's a tough one. B5, A5, B4. No, that's not on. A5, B4. Really tough to make progress here. Better king, but no way to break open the position. So I play like e6 somehow. Yeah, I don't think this move really does a whole lot. I was thinking about a5, but I'm not sure what's holding me back from a5 is not a bad move. I mean, it puts the pawn on the correct color complex for my bishop. He probably doesn't have any real big downsides. I mean, he can sack the exchange with rook d5 check there. I'm just not sure he wants to give up an exchange or not to win a pawn. It's not really a plan for me to play rook c6. It's probably White is like holding on here. I might have had a better move than rook c6 though. Something changing the dynamics a little bit. I could have played d5. That move's kind of counterintuitive. d5, pawn takes d5, rook takes d5, rook takes d5, bishop takes d5. Alright, rook b4. Stopping me from playing rook b6. That was one idea. I do have this move at some point. Constant Change is dealing with that threat at the moment, it looks like. Maybe a rook sacrifice on c3. Unlikely. Very unlikely that's going to break through. How do I make progress here? How many pawns can I get for a rook? This is pretty tough to actually win this position. I don't have a clue. This is good D by white. He got his king to E3. See how I'm going to do this. Bad bishop or no bad bishop. It's hard for me to make progress. How about bishop moves somewhere? Bishop moves somewhere. Bishop D7. I don't know what to do here, guys. I don't know what to do. F6. Cutting my king off? That's crazy. No, I don't see how to make progress here. Well, I have one way I keep forgetting about. One way to try to do this. But it's not that great. I mean, I can play D5. But objectively, it's not like winning or anything. It shouldn't really be enough to change the reality of the situation. If I could get in D5, we trade some pair of rooks, and then I can play F5 maybe at some point. Still, I'm not winning. So I guess it just isn't enough to win. Are we still connected here? He's taking a long time. Where's Saronchi? I don't know. He must have taken the day off. Rook D4, D5. Let's do something. His double rooks it's a pretty powerful entity. Of course, he doesn't have to take. He can leave it there as well. I'm like having hallucinations that I can play B4. It's crazy. I'm like, why does my rook feel so secure on C5? Well, there's a good reason for that. Bishop D3. Well, I guess just take. This looks fully equal, actually. Took with the bishop. Rook C4. Man, he's like a rock. He took with a pawn. Wow. That's kind of risky. Giving me the file here? Isolating your own pawn on D5? I think that's a slight mistake. We have some glimmer of hope, maybe. Now he has a king improvement. Improving king move. Wow. There's two weaknesses. Probably not enough. I shouldn't trade rooks, but I was panicking with the time control. Not enough to win here. And now he no longer has an isolated pawn. Yesterday I swindled him in a drawn position. Let's see if we can pull it off once again. Yep. Maybe I should go to f4 there. But I see he had... Yeah, maybe I should have gone to f4 there. Endgame swindle. Whenever they offer a draw, you can smell the blood in the water, and there's a good chance to take them out. In that drawn position, as Chernyshov did against me, yeah. So that whenever you guys get a draw offer, think about playing for a win. Even if it's a drawn position, it's very hard psychologically to survive the draw offer refusal. It's happened to me. Alright, no, anyway, it was a good game. It was obviously a drawn position, but a little tricky there. What did white do wrong? Hunt the king. Let's try c4. You're into c4. You feel a little sad for constant change. Well, what did he concretely do wrong there? We'd have to really look at it. I set him up with that h3, and I mean, maybe he's already in trouble there when I have that bishop ending. Probably he just needs to put his bishop on a different diagonal. I won a bishop ending at my last tournament in Harkon, which was drawn, but my opponent had to find, like, in time pressure, one move. Like one move that was literally all he had. It wasn't that obvious. So bishop endgames are really tricky. He probably didn't have that many moves to draw there. Yeah, I don't know. I was talking about this yesterday. For some reason, like, all of my opponents offer me draws. It doesn't matter if they're lower rated or 300 points, 400 points lower. It's very popular to offer draws. You know, I don't know, where I come from, it's like bad etiquette to offer draws to someone who's like 300 points lower than you. I mean, higher than you. Lower than you. It's just stupid to offer a draw to someone who's 300 points lower than you. But to offer a draw, what am I thinking about here? All right, this is interesting. Knight c6 is really, really creative. Why not, though? I mean, it looks like an idea in some Rossalimos, and I think that it's probably a move that exists theoretically. Absolutely viable try here. Knight f3, e4, knight d4. What do I want to do? d3? Because there's a lot of possible choices. Obviously not d4. Pawn takes d4, queen takes d4, knight c2. Family 4. Yeah, I mean, draw offers. Don't do it unless you have a reason, would be my advice. Years ago, Alex Yermolinsky wrote an article for New in Chess about the psychology of draw offers. He was annoyed by people, is annoyed by people, and as many people are, lower rated people offering draws and stuff. I've had a lot of funny stories about that over the years. and a lot of funny reactions by different. I've seen funny reactions by different strong players when they get offered draws by lower rated players. So there's like this. One of the best reactions I've seen were like probably my old friend Roman Gingiashvili, friend and enemy. Roman like got offered a draw by Roman was 2600 and he got offered a draw by some guy I think was 2150 or something like that. And it was a position where Roman has having trouble winning, but there were still a lot of winning chances left. And I think Roman, what did he do? Oh, he was like, "I'll let you know when it's a draw." I thought that was kind of funny. He's just like had that prepared, this like statement. "I'll let you know when it's a draw." And he did win the game. Another one was, "Hey, Saronche, what's up?" Offering draws for people who don't care about chess. They're too lazy to calculate. Well, as I said, I think if you do offer a draw, you should have a reason for offering a draw. I'm kind of like getting ahead of myself and separating like different stories, but so the reactions of strong players to draw first from lower rated players. Gingy like, "I'll let you know when it's a draw," and then once I saw a cool reaction from Dmitry Gurovich, same situation. I don't know, like a 2300 offering a draw to 2600 or something like that. Dmitry Gurovich, who's much more like, I don't know, he's much more polite than Roman Gingiashvili, was like, he had a kind of comedic answer. He basically just like, he just like acted like he heard this strange sound, like coming from like over his shoulder or something. He was like looking behind him, like to see like where this, because it couldn't possibly be his opponent who just offered a draw. So it was like a whole routine, like a kind of theater that Dmitry did. I thought that was kind of funny. Here now, if I play e4, I'm getting this backward pawn. So Dmitry just turned over his shoulder and he was like looking behind him to see like where the draw offer came from, because it couldn't possibly be the guy that he was playing against. And I think his opponent was a fairly decent player, but not that strong. But anyway, so Yermolinsky talks about it as, you can do it as a kind of weapon. I mean, offering a draw to a higher rated player in many cases will have the like psychological effect that it's going to incite the player to really try to beat you even more. So you can kind of incite them to be more aggressive and really maybe over press in some situations. So there's a definite psychological reasons for offering a draw that might be smart against certain players. You think you can put them on tilt? I mean, DST, if you play any poker, I think you should understand this concept. But I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Like, this is kind of like gamesmanship and open to interpretation. But again, I made the mistake of offering a draw in an equal position, but in a recent tournament, my last tournament. And then when it gets declined, you put yourself in a very negative psychological place. You're like, oh, this guy's gonna beat me, and he wants to beat me, and I feel like a loser for offering a draw, basically, against a guy who won't accept it. So, or the other guy saying I can beat you in an equal position, which is very hard to deal with psychologically. Yeah, so it's better not to put yourself in a situation. If you think there's a high likelihood the other opponent's going to say no, I wouldn't offer a draw. But I mean, last game it was a totally reasonable offer by my opponent. It's a probably drawn position, so we were both low on time. Knight on b to d5 here. e4 doesn't really look right. He could play knight here. I'm having trouble finding a move, though. I guess b3. But even b3 has some problems. e4 takes, knight takes e4. I don't know what to do here, guys. I'm not just stalling because I'm talking a lot. I'm actually stalling because I don't know what to do. Okay, well, let's take away this knight b4 thing. You have so many chess stories. You should write a book called "The Chess Stories of Strong I Am." Yeah, that's the problem. You don't have a, you're not a GM or a famous chess celebrity. Your title's sort of dubious. I mean, you need a title that can sell at Borders, or I'm dating myself now, at whatever major bookstore you have near you. You need a title that will sell like to the general population. You know how like Asa Hoffman wrote a chess book. He's like a Marshall or Manhattan Chess Club regular, old school IM who was like hustling blitz when I was playing in my first tournament, and he's still around. Chess Gladiator, he calls his book calls himself the Chess Gladiator. So you need to like make up a title for yourself. The Chess Warrior. Anecdotes and Stories of the Chess Warrior. Bishop g4. Now I can play e4, and maybe it's worth considering. But again, he's going to get a grip on the position. Okay, h3. Or Anecdotes of a Chess Warrior. Yeah, I have a lot of stories. It's just a question of how to market them or whatever. I'm not that famous, so I'm not sure. And I don't want to be like the chess games of me. Maybe we'll find a place to publish it someday. Yeah, you could do categories of stories. Yeah, draw first from strong players. Look over your shoulder. I'll let you know when it's a draw. I've probably seen other ones too. I did this one time. I want to freely admit it. My friends witnessed it. I was playing this young FIDE master, Stephen Weiner. I don't think he was a FIDE master though. He was just like a weak master, or maybe even like 2100. But he was tough even as a kid, and I was maybe 2400 and he was like 2100, and he was trying to draw. And at some point he offered me a draw, and I literally was in a very bad mood, and I was pissed off, and it was taking me like 5 hours to try to grind him down. And then he offers like multiple draws though. It was like 2 or 3 times, and he's kind of ignorant, and I was just like frustrated to no end. So I was just finally like, I'd rather die than have a draw with you. I said this to the guy. I literally said this at the board. My father, like the kid's father, was there. He was like astonished. I said this. I'd rather die than have a draw with you. I didn't know what to say. I was like very frustrated, but it was coming from my heart. I was that pissed off. Like the 3rd time he offered a draw, I was like, obviously, I don't really want to draw. So I tried to think of something really, really dramatic, to say. And it worked. It worked. I won this position that was like absolutely drawn with correct play. And somehow I pulled it out after this incredible statement witnessed by the... Actually, I know Steve, and he, he never held anything against me about it, I guess, but it was just pure frustration. Bishop h5. That's an annoying move. I thought you'd give me a little ground here. We go with the bishops, the 2 Bs. Alright, anyway, we'll give this a shot. I don't know. I think this has gone a little bit too far here. I think I'm going a little bit too far here. I'm getting a little overextended. Yeah, there were witnesses to this comment I made, especially the kid's father. He wasn't like a little kid. I mean, he was like a teenager or early, he was probably like 14 or something like that. I wouldn't say this to like a 7-year-old kid or something. I mean, it was somebody I played before. He's a pretty capable player. He wasn't born yesterday. He was, 2100 or something. So he should know better than to like offer a draw 3 times in the same game. But I was just so thrilled that I managed to pull it off somehow. Your cat pulled the plug on my internet. Old stories from a chess master, or stories from an old chess master. We could do that. That would be appropriate. All right. Bishop pair. Wow, you took back that way. Instantly took back that way. What is up with that? Why did Hunt the King like snap? Poker terminology. He snap captured on G6. Wow, the snap capture. Okay, I just don't like knight f4 happening. You actually could have done that in response to knight h4. You could have played knight f4 maybe. 40 seconds. Hunt the King is trying to take me out on the clock. We've got a reasonable hippo kind of formation here. But his position is reasonable too. His knights are pretty solid. It's going to be hard to displace them from their posts. Maybe virtually impossible, actually. But I don't like f takes g. You should take back with the h-pawn. Keep your pawn structure whole. That is probably my best chance in this position now. The fact that he broke up his structure. But yeah, every time I played Steve, it was always a tough game. The first game I beat him was very long too. And we have some draws. C6 is a good move. You want to shore up the white squares, and you're supporting your knight on d5. I still wish this pawn was back on g3 in this position. It would be a little safer. Actually, maybe I should put my queen on e2. I didn't like the x-ray from the rook on e8, but that probably shouldn't be a big factor here. It's not like he's going to play like knight f4 or something. Maybe my queen would be better off like supporting g4, defending the king side a little bit more. And then again, I can put it on c4, probably defend laterally. But when you have a pawn up on g4 like I do here, I think you want to take into consideration your I hate playing rook d1 too. Take in consideration your what am I saying? King position, pawn structure. Weakness of the king side is a factor. Black's still pretty solid here. Maybe he was thinking of attacking me along the f-file. That's why he took back with the f-pawn. It's kind of weird. I hate playing rook fd1. You know, the other rook should really come across here, but I was afraid if I played bishop d2, he's just on my d-pawn real fast. You know, move his knight and he's attacking d3. Then I have to play something insipid like bishop to f1. So here I can try to play b4, b5. My only plan in this position is like a minority attack on the queen side. The only structural plan. Pawn break, b4, b5. And maybe I can chip away at his structure. But his knights are very difficult to lose, you know, to get rid of from their... They are redundant on f6 and d5, which is good for me. But on the other hand, they're difficult to shake. Time's getting low. Yeah, I was getting low. Snap take is not a terminology in poker. I know, but we borrowed it from poker. Snap take, I mean, there's no snap anything in chess, so I just made it up, but it sounds cool. Snap capture was a snap capture. Right, so h5 is a good try. That's what I'm talking about. That's why my queen should have been here in the first place. c4 is just not a stable position because of b5 and whatnot. I know. Well, I could do like pawn takes pawn, maybe. I hate doing this. Hunt the King has played really a good game this time. Man, almost flagging. Minority attack. Where's my minority attack? There it is. Wow. He's playing like Juan possessed. What is this about? Man, look at those knights, dude. How do I get rid of those knights? You don't. You know, that's the answer. The short and long answer. You don't get rid of those knights. Those knights are there to stay forever. You gotta work around them. Wow. Queen f5. What? Where do I come up with this crazy move? Rook. Oh man, I thought you had rook c7 there. Wow, this was a nice game by Hunt the King, though. I mean, he really, really played tough, and that's, I think, one of the toughest games he's played against me. Really a good struggle. Two knights, oftentimes, this is a standard kind of thing. The two knights was a really good combination. The knights can focus on like one color complex. It's oftentimes better to have two knights against two bishops than it is to have bishop and knight. They're easier to coordinate together. You know how difficult it is to like bishop. The hillbilly attack. Jack Young. Jack Young was a 2300 player at his peak. Excuse me. He wrote an article for a lot of articles for Chess Horizons, which now sucks, but it was a New England is a New England chess magazine published by the Massachusetts Chess Federation, Chess Association, which now has sucked for years, but it was actually a good magazine at some point. It was like the best like state chess magazine years past. And Jack Young wrote this column called Bozo's Chess Emporium, which even like Simon Williams has referenced recently, talking about this hillbilly attack. Simon Williams likes to play a lot of weird stuff, so not a complete surprise there. But it's a pretty silly opening for white, obviously. There are a lot of different ways we could play here. I bet knight f6. I'm not sure this is a main line of the hillbilly attack or not. We have a lot of options. Knight e4, knight g4. Knight back to d7 is perfectly... Knight d7 does look a bit passive, doesn't it? Knight d7, d4, knight g4, d4. Whatever I do, he's going to play d4. The knight e4, and d4, my knight kind of gets trapped in some lines. There are some interesting independent possibilities here. Knight e4, d4, f6, f3, knight to g5, bishop takes g5. So you guys follow me? I'm saying like knight e4, d4, f6, f3, knight to g5, bishop takes g5, pawn takes g5, queen h5, check g6. No, I don't think that's really the best for me. I don't know here. I mean, my position is pretty solid. It's really just a question of the knight. You know, what's best for this knight. Maybe knight g4 is going back to h6. Something that I'm doing sometimes, but I guess if we have to play this position, we have to consider all possible knight moves. Even knight g8. Knight g8 deserves consideration. Let's go for it. You guys are like, why would you play knight g8? Well, I think that it's logical in a way, because maybe we can turn it into a kind of Caro-Kann. This is the only line where I can really develop the bishop outside the pawn chain. We have an advanced Caro-Kann with the bishop on b3. It's really weird. Really bizarre. I didn't punish the hillbilly attack. I just wasted 2 minutes thinking about stuff I didn't do. Knight g8. I mean, typically in the Caro-Kann, advanced Caro-Kann, I want to play first for the c5, but I have to watch out for like bishop a4 check. Is it an issue? Yes, probably. Probably a fairly reasonable plan for white in a lot of positions here. To play like c5, bishop a4 check, and then maybe, let's see, well, knight taking on c5 and playing knight d4 at some point with a Nimzovician sort of center. We've never played this position in my life or anything really akin to it. I have to say white must be better here. Seems like a fairly reasonable advanced Caro-Kann. My bishop is strong outside the pawn chain, but I'm not sure how to develop. I don't want to play f6. c5 looks a little early. He could also play c4 at some point. You know, that's an important resource for white in a lot of these types of positions. Alright, whatever. I mean, I've got to find a way to develop my pieces. Some of these Caro-Kann players like to play like knight e7, knight c8. We have one Hungarian GM, a young GM, Prohaska Peter. He loves to play the Caro-Kann and maneuver his knight to c8. I've never been a big, you know, supporter of knight c8 in any kind of position. Although I did do it in the infamous blitz game against Grisha. That's on YouTube. Can you recommend a good chess book for a 1900 player? I believe he's a positional player. Wow. That's a really wide question. Wow, we could think of anything. Like a gift for a player who's like 1900, a positional player. Good question. Let me think about that for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we could think of a million ideas. We got challenges from, let me get back to you on that. Kyriakos, Mule Skinner, Etatsuar, and Crazy. Well, positional player 1900. Well, I mean, any kind of book is pretty much open game for a player as strong as 1900. I don't think there's any limit there. Bishop c2. This is one move that I think is probably a mistake for white, theoretically. I mean, you are challenging. You are exchanging my good bishop. My good bishop. You're a good bishop. I can't even talk. So bishop c2. I think this is helping black probably. All right. Maybe I should take on c2. His queen's not particularly well placed there, but I mean, you could buy a game collection of a player's, you know, like a player's games. I mean, I think that's the greatest kind of chess book, really, you know. I mean, that will always be treasured by someone. If you buy, like, I don't know, some opening book for someone, I mean, it, you know, it doesn't have this like long-term value that something like a tournament book or a game collection of a great player would have like a really long-term value, you know. So I recommend if you buy a gift for this person who's like 1900 sort of positional player, I would really think, you know, the best thing to buy would be like a collection of games or a tournament, a famous like tournament book. You know, that would be my recommendation. How am I going to get my pieces developed here? C5, pawn takes pawn. A knight C6 is interesting. He has knight, queen C2, knight G5 type of ideas. Knight F5. Knight F5 with the idea of what? G4, knight H4. Yeah, let's try it. I think G4 is kind of weakening. So we don't even need to play C5. We don't have any bad pieces here, but we will need some counterplay at some point. Yeah, I don't know which book to recommend. I mean, really find, if you know like a player he likes, you know, a famous player he likes, you know, if it's not like Sergei Karyakin or something, you can probably find a book. Most top players in the history of the game have had like books written about them, or collections of their games. But you know, I think the best kind of book to buy is really like a book of annotated games by like the player themselves, you know. So if it's Karpov or Kasparov, you know, if it's one famous player, you really want to like, you want to get a book that like annotates games, you know, either by the player themselves or by a really strong player, you know. So, you know, not like Raymond Keane. He is a GM, but he's like sort of frowned upon by the chess world. Like a really strong annotator. I always talk about like Tartakover and his book 500 Master Games of Chess. Decided to play H5 here. I'm going to leave my king in the center. The thing about Tartakover 500 Master Games of Chess, it's a classic book, but as I said the other day, it's not like some random is annotating the games. It's a GM strength player, so that's cool. But I think the best and most instructive books are books annotating the games of the players themselves. I have, like on my table now, you know, Kasparov did a pretty good series on his great predecessors, and in that case, most of the games, like Kasparov is annotating the games himself, but oftentimes he gives notes about, you know, he gives the older notes that the players themselves, like when he's talking about Karpov's games, he'll talks about Karpov, he'll talk about like both Karpov's annotations as well as like his own later annotations, you know, like improving upon Karpov's annotations. So I think that's the best way to improve, studying complete games and books of complete games, or tournament books consisting of complete annotated games. It's really important to understand the game in its entirety. So endgame books are fine, opening books are fine, but it's more satisfying to see the entire game played in its entirety. Alright guys, so here we are. Maybe I should take on d4 here, but knight takes d4. What am I concerned about? Maybe rook c8. I'll never be able to castle queenside if I do that. Oh well. Could have played h4 as well, maybe stopping knight g3. That's sort of a good idea. Maybe I should have done that. Difficult to make decisions in chess, isn't it? You have so many choices. That's why I'm constantly finding myself in time pressure. But a lot of you guys lately have been trying to blitz me in my time pressure. Constant change is probably one of those. And you've got to really take the increment into consideration. Does Andrew Soltis have any pawn structure books? Yeah, he did write a recent pawn structure book. It's okay. It's okay. There's several pawn structure books, pawn structure in chess. sold this book. I had a discussion with one of my students who has that book, and he wasn't overly impressed with it, but it's not a bad book. Soltis has written a few kind of crappy books, but most of his books are pretty good. OssePass is giving me more time. No need for that, man. We don't need more time. It's okay. All right. So h4. I wanted to stop knight g3. Don't give me more time because it's lengthening the games, and a lot of them are like almost 20 minutes already. I can handle the time, the increment. It is really early here. I was talking a lot about non-game related stuff, so it's only move 15 and I'm out of time. Well, I have 2 minutes left. I had 1 minute left. Kira Kospez, welcome. Yeah, I would recommend a game collection book, annotated by the players themselves. That was always my biggest love, you know, studying complete games. So b4. Wow, we've got really strong knights. Now there is a pawn hanging on b4, but he has a pin with queen b3. So I'm not convinced. Yeah, I have queen b6 there. Okay, I guess we try to grab here. Take the bait. My king is in the center. It's true. Queen a4, queen a5, queen b3, queen b6. I'm getting more materialistic with age. My position is really quite solid, so the only question mark is my king position. White is a long way from threatening my king here. Trying to set up some kind of checkmating ideas with like knight to g3 check, getting on this diagonal here, but there's nothing obvious. Knight g3 check. Got the guarding. The knight on e2 is guarding everything. g3, d4. Yeah, bishop a3 seems like a good move. Bishop takes. He's got several answers to that. I guess I'll play a5. Everything's protected. And he's paralyzed. He can't actually move this knight on b1 at the moment. So, don't talk it anymore. You make me feel bad about my small donations. What? So, we've got no, tough decision here. I feel safer trading queens in this ending with my king kind of messed up in the center of the board. We have a lot of positional advantages. Open file control, strong outposted knight, bit of space with the cramping pawn on h4. If I trade queens, we transfer to an ending where, in fact, my king being in the center could actually be a significant advantage. So I think this is a no-brainer. You know, you definitely don't mind trading queens here. And he's got a queen f3 here, so knight g3 check's not quite on. What to do? Well, he's just hanging a pawn, right? Knight takes d4. Also have like rook c2. Don't have a lot of time though. I'm a little behind in development, but he's not doing that healthy either, and his knight can't come out. Look at this. It can go where? Can't get at my king. It's just hanging a piece. Looks lost. Oh, you could try F5. Difficult to play, you know, advanced Caro-Kann type positions. This is what I was talking about earlier with this comment I saw from somebody about why are rapid games so much more tactical than long games, and it's tactics are easy, you know, strategic chess is hard. And that's why, you know, we're getting these games where we're like move 15 and I don't have any time left, because I'm trying to play strategic sort of chess, Caro-Kann advanced variation. C4. I'm not sure chess was made to be played blitz, but it is fun. So, alright, Kyrgios. I haven't really played e4 today. I've been playing knight f3 and c4. I'm in a little bit of a dream state. Hello, master. Mr. Sparkle Horse. Spinal Tap, what's up, man? What's up? What's the news? What's the word? Absurd? I'm going to play g3. Spinal Tap chess. What's up with your chess, man? Are you playing? Playing much? You don't get a chance to play much with the store? Life? Responsibilities? Good to see you, man. Also, welcome to Railbird80. I've played almost every kind of like line against the King's Indian that you can imagine. Probably I've played almost every single variation that there exists, except for like, for whatever reason, I don't think I ever played the Averbach system. Pretty much everything else. The old G3. So Kyrgios plays this move that I play myself a lot. I had a game in this last tournament last week. Queen c7 is not theoretical. Not a great square for the queen in general in the King's Indian. It's kind of a passive square. So I had a game that actually was like a game from the late 70s. I was actually talked about Andy Soltis a minute ago as a chess author. He's an interesting player. He wasn't that strong of a GM, but he did play the King's Indian extremely well, and that was his specialty. The Dragon as well. So if you like the King's Indian and Dragon, he's a good player to check out. Anyway, I had a game that I was like coming up with moves over the board, but it actually turned out to be like this really old American GM game from, it was like 1982. Michael Rode versus Andy Soltis. I thought I was like coming up to something original over the board, but it turns out like the entire game had been played before by Andy Soltis against Rode. But I came up with the same idea. It's in my study on my last tournament here from my game against Pastor Ferenc. If you like c6 in the G3 Fianchetto King's Indian, interesting game. So e5, he plays e5 with the queen on c7, but the queen is not well placed. I prefer it to be like on e7, normally in King's Indian type positions. Same thing, you see it occasionally in the Pierts as a way of black supporting e5, but just generally speaking, the queen tends to not have much active role on c7. So, alright. It's also a square where it has a tendency to be vulnerable to some tactical themes. Spinal Tap chess is never here when constant changes. Wow. It could be some kind of alien abduction theme. haven't played in a tournament in the US for a long time. I didn't get to play this summer when I was there, so I haven't seen Spinal Tap chess in years. The last time I played back home was 2 years ago, I guess, or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. 2 years ago or 3, I can't remember now. H6. I had a funny system I used to play against the fianchetto. Actually, that was my first defense. Instead of c6, I played knight bd7, e5, and then h6. And I had a fairly good result with this system that was quite unusual. Eventually I lost to my friend Zlatko Alincic, and I sort of gave it up. But it's essential for the King's Indian player to have a good system against the fianchetto setup, because it's very durable, very solid for white. A6 now, threatening the proverbial b5. However, maybe we have this idea in some positions. c5. The Vietnamese player, who's now 2700, what's his name? Lê Quang. I played him a number of games here in First Saturday Grandmaster tournaments when he was more human. And once he did this to me, he got in c5 in one of these kind of positions, I think, and just turned me out. But here it's not that clear. We could play it like c5, d takes c, d takes c. It's probably good for white. Black has not much development. b6 is weak. d6 is weak. There's some tactics for white, and ultimately, you know, if I get a symmetrical structure, I have a standard kind of plan where we can try to plant a piece like on d6, which is something that I do in other lines of the King's Indian too. The Smyslov system with bishop g5. So this is a combination of some tactics and some positional ideas. It's a pretty slow setup. a6, c6, and queen c7. It looks pretty fishy. Right, so now, yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this. It is interesting to play pawn takes pawn here. But if pawn takes pawn, knight d7, I could try to sack a pawn with e6 maybe. But I'm going to go with the sensible approach. Nothing fancy. I didn't really go into this till I was sure that this simple approach is probably fine for white. Queen c2, queen e2. Where do we want to be? Queen a4 is even interesting. Could support the c5 pawn with queen a3. Queen b3. Vulnerable to queen, bishop e6. Ideas. I think this is a very important moment here, determining where to put the queen. Queen c2, queen a4, queen b3, queen e2, queen c1 with a tempo. Maybe that's a good move. Maybe I'm a sucker for falling for this queen c1 idea. It's not the most aggressive square for my queen, but it buys a little time by hitting the h6 pawn. That's my main point. Now bishop e6. Rook e1. The problem with bishop e6 is that that's really the best square for black's knight. You know, what he really would like to do is play like knight f8 and knight e6 and knight d4. And so he can't have two pieces on e6. This is the problem strategically. You can't have everything, your cake and eat it too. So bishop e6 feels nice and aggressive and solid, but now how are you going to unravel with this classic King's Indian plan of sticking a knight on d4? You can't. So you can't have everything. And in the long run, I'm going to play king h2, bishop f1, knight c4, and then try to stick a piece on one of these squares. But maybe, you know, maybe at the end of the day, my move queen c1 was inferior because my queen is going to have to move again. Hard to say. Okay, now, wow, a5. I still like queen c2. Knight a4 is also probably good. Looks good. Overprotecting, c5, getting knight b6 ideas. Okay, knight on the rim. It's sort of debatable. It's not a great knight. We got another one coming to c4. There's two outposts on b6 and d6. It's a temporary thing. Knight c4. Ooh. These knights are looking good. This is pretty sweet. It's a pretty strong positional bind. I mean, generally speaking, this type of symmetrical King's Indian positions are sort of harmless in most instances. But I think I've lost enough games with black to strong players, believe me. Walter Brown, that grind you in these kind of positions, man. I mean, it's tough to play strong grandmasters with black, where they got this little tiny edge. Brown in particular, I had some tough games against, where he was just torturing me, you know. And there's no counterplay, no fun counterplay for black in this kind of situation. So the King's Indian can be very tedious, not all that much fun. That's why g3 is such a popular line. My recommendation for black against g3 would be, you know, this Bologan type of stuff. Pano setups with knight to c6. I think that's the most popular too. If you look in a database, g3 King's Indian, by far the most popular setup for black is to play knight c6, d6, and knight c6. So does that make me the engine of change? Spinal chat, you guys are still on that, okay. King g8. Now the white squared bishop coming to life. h4. h4, bishop h3, with the idea of like f3, king g2. Okay, is this a threat? No. Most likely not. Most likely not. When you don't know what to do, improve the worst piece. Dvoretsky, this is my worst piece. It's also a standard two bishops type of position. Fischer was very good. King's Indian attack positions where he has like the bishop pair. We're going to have to play both sides of the board. We have some advantage over here with these outposts, but it might not be enough. One weakness is usually not enough to win a game. So I would give some consideration to, you know, aggressive play on the king side. Maybe I could even try h5 last move. It looks a little over the top though. Too early for that probably. Okay, he has knight b4 threatening knight d3 now. Maybe I should take timeout for this. Do I have time for a timeout? But knight b6 could have been played by me. I can still play it next move. Strategically, black would like to trade the dark squared bishop. Am I going knight b6 here or what? Does it even help to play knight b6? Does it do anything? It's actually protecting my c5 pawn at the moment. He's threatening knight e6. Maybe I should just play like rook d1, then he trades everything. I don't want to see his knight coming to d4. So I'm going to have to take... So I guess rook d1. And he's going to liquidate everything. Alright. Waiting move. I've got to take. I don't have to take, but I think I prefer... Ooh, he took with a pawn. I'm surprised by that one. I guess it's not all that bad. Rook h1. Going for it. Yeah, he's got no... Ooh, better be careful here. h5. Yeah, he sidestepped some threats there. He's very fast. With this terrible bishop, he still has a defensible position. It's sort of hard to believe, but very fast. He's got resources. Queen f7. Now back there. Okay, I don't know if this was the right idea or not. Maybe we go for trades. I don't think it's going to really change anything to trade the rooks here. No, he doesn't want to do it. Interesting. Doesn't like trading. Rook f7, wow. So he's trying to set up bishop f8. Alright, I'm just going to play it safe here. I could have played, you know, rook d8, of course. He's fast. Damn, dude. Really fast. I just wish I could play knight g4, but I don't see it happening. Just don't see knight g4 coming about. All right. Well, very, very technical situation here. White's clearly better, but winning is another matter. Black has multiple weaknesses. It's Walter Brown heaven right about here. Yeah. Walter is just looking down from heaven and smiling. What about this one? Check and take. His queen is real active now. Okay, we're gonna have to hold on to this pawn. And still not easy to convert. See an idea here. Knight c4. That looks particularly nasty. winning a second pawn. Could be some technical problems. I gotta believe this is winning. Bishop, that's best try for sure. Take h6. Just can't get back. Tough game, man. But it's like, yeah, that's something you'd see more in like a long game. This is not, I don't have the ideal style for blitz. Mule Skinner, 8-3. Guys, we're streaming till 12:30. Just done 89. Talking to Spinal Tap or me? Spinal Tap is an IM. International Master. Mule Skinner. Guys, if you'd like to, please check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training. Nothing new there, although I did upload, actually there is something new. I did upload the streams from the last couple days. Since I was away, those are the first uploads I made in over a week. So check it out on Video Chess Training on YouTube. Also, if you can support the stream with a PayPal donation, I appreciate, and appreciate those of you who have done in the past. So it does support the YouTube channel and my continued streaming. Mule Skinner is, there he is. All right. So Mule Skinner is an interesting opponent. I mean, I have a crushing score, 23-1, but actually I have opponents like this who they seem to have terrible results, but actually a lot of the games were really tough. I don't feel like this is a player that I'm running over. In the end, I usually win on some kind of time pressure or blunder, but in fact, a lot of these games have been really, really difficult. Kyriakos. Yeah, he likes to play this closed Sicilian. Let's go with the c5. I was analyzing this actually, d4, c takes d4, queen takes d4, knight f6 recently. It's similar to the hyper-accelerated dragon, but it's slightly different. The positions are a little bit different because the white knight is on c3 rather than on f3, which is like typical in the dragon, the hyper-accelerated dragon, like e4, c5, knight f3, g6. So I never really analyzed these lines, like playing g6 on move 2 in the closed Sicilian, but it is quite interesting. Anyway, what's up, guys? We had the World Championship. Thankfully, it's over. It's like the U.S. presidential election. It was torturous. It was torturous while it was going on, and we're just all so happy that it's over now. The best part of the match was probably the last game in rapid chess where Karyakin had to win, and now we have a beautiful puzzle on lichess thanks to Magnuson. And the puzzle of the day, bishop b5 here. Knight to d4. Yeah. We've played this before with Mule Skinner. Usually I waste a lot of time. I'm just going to play quicker. This is Roman Djindjiashvili's videotape system for white. But not only Roman. I mean, there's some English grandmasters. Plaskett. There was this IM who used to play online called The Usual Suspect. Now I can't remember. He's actually a poker player too. Can't remember his name. Does anybody know who that is? An English IM, poker player, chess player, who went by the name Usual Suspect online. He also played the system for white. But those guys, the English guys, they like to play castles, Plaskett and Usual Suspect, whereas Djindjiashvili patented this bishop retreat to d3. A la Kopek. Lost a lot of great chess players this year. The year is winding down. Year is winding down. It's December 1st. We lost Emery Tate, Danny Kopech. Of course, I know mostly American chess players. Walter Brown, I was just talking about, recently passed away last year or so. The world, it's a sad feeling the World Championship is over. It's a good feeling it's over. Now we can go back to normal chess. I played knight h6 against Mule Skinner before. I'm no fan of this World Championship. They've got to reformat, but we've talked about that enough now. I'm no fan of the World Chess Federation, so the problems are deeper than just the World Championship itself. They need to create a new. We need to overthrow FIDE, create a new federation that will become corrupt in about 15 years. What would you seriously, what is a sporting organization if it's not corrupt, right? Or any organization for that matter. It wouldn't be a real organization if it wasn't corrupt. Wouldn't feel right, would it? People were joking that Karyakin would be like deported from Russia. That's no problem. I'm sure Sinkfeld would be happy to pay for a new chess player slave. B5. I've been playing this for like 20 years, since this system became popular. Roman's early videotapes. B5, much more active than like the quiet B6. We fianchetto in many lines, and we have the minority attack on the queen side as well. So it's. I had another game with Mule Skinner, I believe, in this exact position, and then I don't recall if I did a B4 Queen B6 type of thing. I think first Bishop B7, I guess. We have this idea. B4 to accentuate the bishop on the long diagonal. I don't know how many times I can say it, but knights on knight 3 just don't really do it. And this position is sort of typical. But on the positive side, white's game is a little difficult for black to break it down. I've played this quite a bit. I do have to defend this pawn in some lines. Just like a6 is very passive. What about a5? Bishop takes b5, knight takes e4 is okay for black, of course. But what about a5 and then something along the lines of e5? e5, take. We're really active there. But I don't have knight g4, do I? I do. I even have knight g4. That's pretty cool. I think we go for it. Where can I download this game? Well, what do you mean? You mean like the software we're playing on? The website that we're playing on? lichess? You can just go there, and it's not a download. We're playing in the browser. It's a browser-based chess site, so you can just log on, make an account, and play. Older chess sites tend to be, like programs you have to download. And the nice thing about lichess is that it is browser-based. It's a lot better than chess.com, in my opinion. The software is cleaner. There's no advertising. It's a good thing. So we've got the minority attack flying. We've got pressure on his central pawn. Good solid kingside pawn formation. If you look at the position in terms of pawn structure, this is classic kind of dragon. That's why they call it the dragon, guys, in the Sicilian. It's shaped like a snake. We have 2 pawn islands, and white has 2 pawn islands here. Call these groups of pawns islands. theoretically, the side with the bigger pawn island has a better pawn structure. So I win the contest of better pawn structure because I have the large, solid group of 5 pawns that protect each other, and that's the kind of favorable thing. On the queen side, I can use this quote-unquote minority attack. This is a minority of pawns. This 2 against 3 is actually an advantage. I can use it, trade off 1 pawn on the queen side, and create a situation where he has like basically like an isolated pawn on the queen side, like a lone pawn that I can pick off later on, something like that. Well, without further ado, I guess we have to play b4. I don't really see anything else. That's the idea. What do you think of Carlsen's idea to have a full tournament to determine the champion instead of just a match? I think that it's bogus. Matches are definitely the best determination of overall playing strength of one player versus another player. Tournaments tend to be more random in nature of result. So I think that, you know, Carlsen would be foolish to have this idea. By nature, tournaments are very, you know, higher variance. Random people occasionally win tournaments. You know, I've seen open tournaments where there were like 5 or 6 grandmasters, and you know, some dark horse IM or FIDE master occasionally takes it down. So I really, you know, find it hard to believe that it's a good idea. Already the candidates tournament is high variance and not really necessarily, you know, determining the strongest player. If you want to randomize the result, I think a tournament is a good idea. But you know, if you want to determine like legitimately who the best player in the world is, then I think a match is better. The longer the better. And you know, it just depends on what you want to accomplish. Do you want to determine who the best player is, or do you just want to have an exciting event that makes it exciting for you know, chess fans? They had the knockout, FIDE knockout. Who became world champion? Alexander Halifman, who was ranked like, I don't know, 30th in the world or something. You know, so these knockout world championships, been there, done that. It's you know, you're creating these random winners. It's kind of like a lottery. So I don't know. Chess is never going to be like football or some extremely popular televised sport, despite the hopes of many chess politicians, perhaps. Let's just make it the best we can make it, you know. Okay, bishop d2. Well, so I'm talking about minority attack. I mean, I could even sack a pawn with b3 and still have like fairly good compensation. But that's a little bit too fancy, I think. Best to develop my pieces here. So, Wesley, what do you think? Wesley So. I think Carlsen cares about his title. Well, yeah, I mean, if he does, then he'll keep the system, you know, he'd want to keep the system the way it is. I don't have a big, you know, love for the rapid play, but it makes it exciting. And as I said earlier, I think that it should be like boxing. I mean, if you don't beat the champion, you aren't becoming champion. You have to beat the champion to become champion. And the draw is not enough. So Karyakin drew the regular match, but a lot of people in the history of chess have tied world championship matches. And that's their, you know, claim to fame. But they never became world champion. You can list a number of very, very famous players who came really close. So e5, f5, excuse me, f5. White's looking for some kind of kingside attack in this position, I guess. What am I doing? Well, I could trade pieces here. You know, what would Varuzhin Akobian do? Like bishop a6. So it drops a pawn, probably. Never mind. We do have to watch this pawn. So b3 is interesting, but it is a little bit double-edged because he could play a4, create a potentially dangerous passed pawn. There's also the idea of knight d7, but I want to keep my knight on f6 at this point, I think, to defend my king. So it's a little tough to pick a move here for black. A little tough to pick out a move. Bishop c4 is coming. I could play bishop c6, bishop b7. Debatable. Maybe this rook has to stay here to protect f7 in the event of like bishop c6. I was thinking, if I have to, I can play like rook b8 and bishop b5. Abandon the a file, just go bishop b5. My other idea was to play queen b7 and increase the pressure on the long diagonal, increase the pressure on the e4 pawn. This game will probably be determined by time pressure. Chris Moneymaker wins World Chess Championship. Yeah, I mean, you know, anybody who's a poker player realizes the variance of like one tournament. But I don't think the chess players really think of it in terms of like the way the poker players do. Chess players don't think in terms of variance. And they probably should, though. I mean, the chess players that are poker players will realize what I'm talking about, you know. Non-poker player chess players don't really understand the concept of variance the way that poker players do. One event is like meaningless in terms of, you know, relevance of skill, you know. Rook takes a3. I was hoping for pawn takes, and then I would like blockade it with rook a4. Yeah, but you're dropping a pawn, right? Rook takes a3, takes. Yeah. All right, picking this off. Do you have some kind of trick? Doesn't appear so. So we're back to pawn islands. The minority attack has created an Isolani on a3. We have lifted the pawn on e4. By nature of its vulnerability, also an Isolani. So pawn structure chess. My pawns, you know, this pawn's smile. He might have a trick here, turns out. Not really, though. Not really. I have ways to hold on to my pawn, it looks like. We have several ways. We have bishop, just moving bishop d5, as well as bishop d5. That's good enough. Also d5 would have probably been good enough to leave me with a clear advantage. But I'd rather not trade my valuable bishop on a long diagonal for that knight on g3. The guy is that knight is really bad. Okay, we can win a pawn with bishop takes g2 check. Well, we're already up a pawn, so we're not winning anything. But this pin is obviously the plan. Was the plan. Now we've got more pins. Bishop f6, bishop f8, superior to bishop f6. Queen d2. Okay guys, we have half an hour left in the stream. This was an instructive game, highlighting difficulties facing white in this variation, but I think that Muleskinner had a reasonable game. He should have played bishop c4 at some point. Etatsuar. Etatsuar is a guy who gave us some interesting games the last couple days. There was, actually he was white in both. One was a weird King's Indian that became a Marazzi, where now he's playing e4. Did you play King's Indian? So you played d4 and e4. Ambidextrous. Yesterday you played e4. Wasn't it e4? Did I play a Nimzovich defense or something? How did we? We had a weird position yesterday that was reminiscent of a, what was that game? That's the other day. This is the last game yesterday. What was this again? I played the Caro-Kann? Or it just looked like a Caro-Kann. I don't recall now. Memory loss. DST says most poker players make a living playing cash games. That may be the case. But they still understand what variance is. I don't think chess players really do. Statisticians. So, knight f6. One tournament to determine the world championship to me, I mean, it's... You know, in the old days, there was like Zurich, I guess, Zurich tournament where they determined like candidates for the world championship. I guess if it was a really long tournament, the candidates tournament isn't so bad. Yeah, yesterday e4 knight f6. Okay, it was e4 knight f6. It was an Alekhine. It's bad enough to have the challenger determined by a tournament, but the winner determined by a tournament is, that's like unthinkable to me. Needs to be a longer match, if anything. But you know, we already had two very terrible matches with Anand Carlsen, and where Anand had like no chance at all. And now, you know, Karyakin gave him a run for his money. So, to say the least, you know, Karyakin could have won the match. It was really close. The rapid play, I don't think really means anything. It was entertaining, but for me, the match was over. Karyakin didn't beat Carlsen, although he almost did. It should be ended in regular play. You know, the World Championship should not be determined by rapid play games. That's just silly. I think, in that sense, Sarawan was right when he talked about a like 13th game with draw odds or whatever. That's better than a rapid play, in my opinion. At least Yasser's on the right track. But still, this variation is pretty rare. F3 against the classical move order, and I play A6. Here, I've faced a lot of different variations. E takes D, knight takes C6. I think Mark Hebden played Queen E2 against me. That's a kind of unusual move. I'm talking about blitz, though, not the World Championship time control. And now Tatsuar took on C6. Well, I guess knight takes E3 is not a good move. What do you guys think? Don't have much options here. Don't have many. So this, now the question is, how do we take back on D5? With the queen or with the pawn? Pawn takes looks like a no-brainer. Although the queen would be well placed there. You know, I think that structurally Black's position is just something like queen takes D5, bishop D3. I might have some weird moves, but I'm behind in development. I don't really like my structure. So I think this is necessary. But this has always served me well as a way of playing against the move bishop E3. Kind of gets people out of the main lines. I don't transpose to English attack or whatever. You know, a lot of players who are black in these type positions, they're stuck like, let's say, transposing to the English attack, which is scary, or playing like G6 and transposing to the dragon, or playing E5, which is another reliable move. I actually faced that, I think, yesterday with white. Queen to D4. Okay. Why not, right? You're developing the queen actively. Mr. Chubbles is back. We've got we got the stream here weekdays, Monday to Friday, from 10 to 12:30, and then Tatsuara, I like about you the fact that you played the opening very incisively, you know, and that's something that's sort of rare. You've got a talent for finding incisive play, incisive lines in the opening. Queen d4 is quite creative. I mean, 99% of people would probably play like Queen d2, or move the bishop to like e2, but you played Queen d4. That's troublemaker. E6 has got to be okay. Or bishop b7, the world's best bishop on b7. He's also stopping g6. Bishop b7. Queen check, queen d7. I'm not sure if I like that ending. But now we have a problem. Sorry guys, I'm fighting a cold. I've had it since before my tournament started, basically last week. So forgive me if I'm coughing and sneezing here. Queen d4 is awkward because it makes it difficult for me to develop my bishop on f8. So I'd like to challenge the queen on e5, but how to do that? Any sort of pawn sacrifice ideas like queen c7, queen takes d5, bishop b7? Looks a little too generous. E6, and then what? What am I going to do? Maybe queen f6, desperately trying to trade queens. E6, we could sack a pawn. E6 castles queenside, bishop e7. Queen takes g7, bishop f6, trying to turn the long diagonal against white is one idea. I'd like to play e5 somehow. I don't see how it's going to happen. F6. White's got a big lead in development. Queen's developed, bishop's developed. I have no pieces developed here. I have a strong pawn on d5, and that's about it, so I have to be careful. Rook b8. Rook b8. Also, awkward move. Not exactly classical development. White's ready to castle queenside. I have to look this line up. This looks pretty dangerous for black, actually. Possibly critical. Did you think of this yourself, or do you know this already? Queen d4. I don't know, guys, what to do. This looks unpleasant. Man, I don't know. All right. We may have to sack a pawn with bishop e7, bishop f6, like I was talking about. I don't really like giving up material, but I'm just not sure I have enough compensation. There is also like the ugly like f6, king f7 kind of plan for black, which looks really unnatural and weakening. But I do have, we talked about pawn structure last game, it's the same thing again. We have the great pawn island, and white has 2 3-pawn islands. So structurally I'm good, and this pawn structure can afford a lot of protection to my king in a position like f7. So this is something that masters will think about, you know, playing this pork chop type of king formation. King on f7, artificially castling and solving the problem of my development. Queen f6 I mentioned. The problem with that is that, you know, he goes into b6. He can avoid the exchange of queens with a very invasive move like queen to b6 in some lines. So I'm going to be left with a fairly awkward choice. I mean, you also have to consider that white in some positions will have c4 as a serious threat. Not right away, but soon. To break up my pawn chain, maybe put pressure on my queen on d8. So now he goes bishop d3. I thought castle's queenside is clearly the best move. Bishop d3 isn't bad, but it's not nearly as threatening as castle's queenside. He's not threatening c4, and it's not as dynamic. Bishop e7, queen takes g7, bishop f6, queen goes to somewhere like h6 or g3, and then bishop takes b2. My king will always be in danger there. Not a lot of time. I'd really like to trade queens if I could. Again, queen f6, queen b6 is problematic. You could play rook b8. What else can I do here? Routine development. Don't see any tricks. Bishop e7, queen takes g7, bishop f6, queen g3, bishop takes b2. You could even sack an exchange and have massive compensation. Bishop takes b2. My king isn't really safe there. So, is it humanly possible for each king to make either side impossible to castle with a sacrifice? Yeah, I would think so. This is pretty awkward. Queen f6, queen b6, bishop e7, queen takes, bishop f6, bishop takes b2. He also has other moves like queen g4. I don't know. f6, man. f6 is... This bishop d3 really kind of is almost against f6. It looks like it takes the steam out of f6. What other options do I have? Queen f6, queen b6. I better make a move now. Alright. We'll go with this line. The most active feeling of the options available. But my king is going to be stuck in the center if he goes into this line. He doesn't have to. He could play, I guess he could play castles or something, but it seems like this is, unless there's something I'm missing. I am missing something. Okay, yeah. Unless there's something I'm missing, though, I still feel like this intuitively is, I was missing something important. Don't say any spoilers, but bishop f6, queen moves, bishop takes b2. He can castle sack the exchange with a monstrously strong dark squared bishop. Every single pawn I have on the board is on the white squares, so if he sacks the dark squared rook for dark squared bishop, I have a nightmare scenario where his dark squared bishop is worth probably more than a rook. Queen a5 check, then offer exchange. I don't have enough control over c5 to play anything to c5. I'd love to trade queens. In that case, I'd be fine. But it's just not logistically possible. And queen f6 runs into queen b6. So queen h6. So he saw queen g3. I tried to get him to play queen g3 and allow bishop h4, but it's not happening. Queen check. No, we need to take. It is a powerful bishop. I don't think I want to necessarily trade it for a rook. But I have some ideas. I think I can save myself. Fortunately, I think black is okay here. See a way out. Maybe he could have played queen g4. But not really. Yeah, maybe queen g4 was the better. He has 3 moves: Queen G3, Queen G, just Queen G4, Queen H6. Those are the only 2. So maybe Queen G4 was the better way to go. I mean, giving him this lateral mobility. Queen A4 check isn't a big deal because I have Bishop D7 all the time, but it wouldn't have allowed this, which may save my butt here. Queen F6, because in this case, he can't afford to lose a whole rook. You know, he can afford to sack the exchange, but he can't afford to lose a whole rook. So I think this position should be defensible for black. I'm only like a tiny bit worse, if at all. All right. His bishops are pretty scary, but I am controlling the entry points on the B file. I feel like black should be okay here. I don't have too much time. Wow, that's not going to happen. You're not playing Bishop B4 check on me. We got a good king for the ending. Now C4. Man, I'm running out of time here. Okay, 7 to guard the 7th rank. Very, very awkward moment for black. Oh. Bishop takes. He is winning a pawn here. Yeah, dude. Nice game by a Tatsuar. Yeah. Look, he finds everything. Rook endgame I'm not interested. I mean, bishop's endgame I'm not really interested in. So now it's a question of technique. And he even finds rook c2. That's a good move. This is tough. Possibly a draw, but it's you know, tedious for black. Playing for a win. I forgot my f6 pawn was protected. Man. Sees everything. Yeah. Okay, good game. That's pretty strong, man. Pretty strong. Impressive technique at the end. It was obviously almost winning for me, but this is pretty impressive how quickly he played this. Sorry, I just declined somebody's challenge, but Itatswara, that's pretty impressive, your blitz play here. I didn't see, I dropped a piece. I don't really know how I lost here. I just took on f6. This is a terrible blunder. But really nice technique, man. I mean, that's impressive. We're going to play Shryan. This is the last game for today. London predictions. No, I don't know what's going on with London. I have to take a look at that. So we just dropped a piece there. That was good. But pretty impressive technique there from Itatswara, who is obviously a very strong player. He's played some very incisive games against me. But I was impressed by your play in the increment there. Very good technique. Most people sort of panic when they get low on time, and he didn't panic at all. He played mistakenly a little bit, giving me the A pawn, obviously, but then recovered quickly. Keeping his wits about him. Nice game. Most people would just go totally panic mode when they lost their A pawn in that position, but he just kept his cool and continued to play sensibly. I mean, maybe that's a draw. You know, even after I win the A pawn, it's a rook pawn, and there may be, in reality, it may be very difficult for me to win. You know, even with a powerful A pawn, there's not enough pawns on the board. Worst case scenario, he can probably like sack his bishop for the A pawn. So it was a good game though, for the most part. I'm just sort of sad I lost. It was anticlimactic, the finish there. Just when I thought I was winning, I lost. Not the typical result. London prediction. So the London Chess Classic. I like how they call it Chess Classic, like it's been in existence for 100 years or something. It's sort of funny, but it's a relatively like new tournament. Hastings is a chess classic, but anyway, names aside, the London Chess Classic is a big thing on the chess calendar. I have some friends who are playing there. I actually thought about it, but it's pretty expensive to play in London. I mean, it's not like the budget tournament. But anyway, I have my other reasons for not playing. I'm playing poker in Prague. I'll be going to Prague for the European Poker Tour to play some side events there. And I won't be streaming between December 9th and the 19th. The London Chess Classic is starting real soon prior to that, but they do overlap. So, just so you guys know, I'll be streaming next week, but then we're going to have another break, and then I'll be back like the 20th of December through the 23rd. Probably like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 20th through the 23rd, I'll be back streaming again. I like to play a little bit of poker now and then. A takes b6. Last year, I ran into Luc Van Wely at the European Poker Tour Prague. And some other chess players. There is a chess tournament, like low buy-in, like $300 poker tournament, but it's kind of not that serious. Actually, I had a good chance to win last year, but I took a really bad beat when we were 6-handed. And so much for being a EPT trophy holder. The guy who won the tournament was really a fish. A takes B3. Skirmisher. That is skirmisher, technically. Yeah, I'm just going to play a bunch of side events. Probably nothing over 1,000, maybe. If I satellite into a 2,000 or something. I just don't really have a big bankroll right now. And I'm not getting backed by anybody. So I'm just playing for fun. Knight BD7 from Shryan here. This is probably a theoretical position. But guys, in general, if you want to play something against the Slav, this variation that I'm playing, sorry for the arrows, Queen C2, it's not objectively dangerous for black, but it's like a kind of good all-in-one system. My problem was that I was away from chess for like 5 years, and when I came back, I wasn't really up to speed in a lot of the main lines of the semi-Slav and a lot of very sharp variations. So I started playing Queen C2 as a kind of stopgap, just to kind of play like an all-inclusive variation against the Slav that allowed me to kind of, you know, control the game a little bit. But objectively, it's not like active enough to offer white. You know, I don't know if anything can get an advantage against the Slav, but this variation is. Now Shryan's actually following a game I had from the summer in Zalakarosh against Sabo Attila, this very kind of boring FIDE master who I made this insane hallucination against. After E3, castles, H3. Now he played A6. It's not necessary to play A6 until I play B4, actually. I mean, I guess it's not a bad move. We can still transpose. Against Sabo Attila, it was like castles. Shryan played Rook C8. That's kind of unnecessary. Anyway, castles, H3, Knight E4, and I had some crazy hallucination. I played Knight E5 with white. It was a catastrophic positional mistake, and I was like clearly worse after 12 moves with white, based on a hallucination that he couldn't take it for some reason. The guy would be better. This variation doesn't really offer white a lot, but this line is somewhat passive but solid defense for black. Paul Morphy is the best ever. Carlsen is a noob. Well, Morphy had, didn't have quite as much competition. I'm not a Carlsen fan. I just didn't want to see, Karyakin become world champion because I'm even less of a Karyakin fan. Okay, H5. Yeah, that's playable. It's playable. Sometimes I might be able to do B5 as a pawn sack, but not here. So he's like just restricting me from playing G4. It's probably not a bad play. I mean, I'm sure that we can find some games. It's not that common of a line, but we can probably find some games where black played similar to what Shryan did here. Some master games. It's not the most flexible, but I've definitely seen this sort of H5 type of thing. Now, interesting is Rook G1. With Rook G1, H4, can he just do that? Probably. So we can castle, we can take. Very systematic play by Shryan. He took me out in the simul game. I just blundered, though. It was a really gross blunder. I do simuls, by the way, every Sunday here on lichess, 6:30 p.m. If you guys want to check it out and play, perhaps. 20 players this week. I have a tournament game against Grandmaster Attila Sebe. Probably going to play Attila Sebe, who's it's ironic, he's a friend of mine, and he's also kind of a poker player. So I don't know what's going to happen with Attila. He's white, and we're normally friendly, but if he wants a draw, it's okay for me. As I said earlier, as far as draws go, I really think you should have a reason for a drawing. But if it's like a personal friend of mine, I normally am okay with a draw. He's also higher rated than me by like 50, 60 points or more. So we'll see what happens Sunday. I mean, I may have a real game. I may have a draw, a friendly draw. But we'll see. Anyway, so the simul's will be at 6:30. The simul. 6:30 p.m. CET, 20 players. We'll see. What do I do now? Knight coming around here is an idea. Knight takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Knight to d2. Bishop somewhere. Knight b3. e5. I don't know. Everybody is making good points in here. Or if he has the highest win rate. Gary won against Nakamura recently. Gary is good. Gary's good. Gary's good. Well, I mean, I think the most popular world champions are probably Fischer and Kasparov, without a doubt. But DST is a Morphy supporter. You don't see a lot of those. You're not seeing a lot of those recently. Morphy's not really trending at the moment, but all respect to Morphy. Here we have knight h4 is almost always a bad move. And I don't think this position is any great exception. I was expecting bishop takes, so Shrine surprised me with pawn takes. Although it's not a terrible move, he could end up with a very bad bishop on f5. Knight e5. Now this is different from my tournament game. Knight e5. Knight d2 was my plan, but now e5 looks pretty good for black. I think we're going to have to change plans. Knight e5, yeah, this is... I don't know, man. Knight e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes e5. Bishop takes e5, pawn takes e5, rook d8, rook d1. Well, this variation may even, be a draw, actually, objectively. There's not really that much for white in this line. So, draw is possibly on the horizon. We have knight g5, which is kind of an interesting try. Keeping an eye on e4. And no, there again, I think e5 is strong for black, though. We don't want to see like knight e5 coming to d3, the bishop on g7 becoming really powerful. I'm afraid I have to do this. It's kind of insipid, but otherwise, a couple things can happen. He gets in e5, and also, this is how I lost to Sabo Attila. His bishop becomes very strong in the long diagonal. All the black pieces come to life. I think I have to play this. And it's pretty equal. This position is pretty equal. His bishop can come back to life via e6. Though he has to be careful in the ending. There may be tricky endings, like bishop endings where his pawns are on the white squares. He might want to watch out for. So he's got to be careful what kind of endgame he transposes into with that bad bishop. My bishop's outside the pawn chain. It's not quite as bad as his bishop blocked by the pawn on e4. Kasparov would have been better if he put 100% on chess. Well, I think that's when we saw Kasparov start to, get involved in politics in the 90s. That's the late 90s, around 2000. The more he got involved in politics, the less he put into chess. But it was kind of like tough, when you're Kasparov, you've been world champion like 3 or 4 times. It's like sports figures. When you're like Tom Brady or like an NFL quarterback who's been like to the Super Bowl like a whole bunch of times, after a while, it's kind of hard to motivate yourself, I would think. And Kasparov has to deal with that. Kasparov wasn't the same when he played his match with Krem. This the so-called match he lost with Kramnik, I never really considered that to be a real match, you know, to be perfectly honest. I'm not saying it was like rigged or something, but I just don't think Kasparov really cared very much. It was kind of like watching Anand play Carlsen. A little bit, you know, I shouldn't compare Kasparov's effort to Anand versus Carlsen. That's not really fair. But he wasn't himself anymore, and I think that he realized it's time to quit. You know, but I don't think that he like lost on purpose. It was kind of weird though, because Kramnik was sort of Kasparov's so-called like hand-picked successor. They were friendly too. So, but now I wonder, you know, Kramnik is now like a big supporter of, I guess everybody has to be a supporter of Putin and the establishment in Russia, but man, I would imagine that would really have affected Kasparov's relationship with Kramnik, because he was always like very favorable toward Kramnik. Do I have bishop e6? Sorry, Freudian moment. Bishop c4 is kind of a cool move. All right, good bishop, bad bishop. So Shryan getting low on time. He was his mentor, right? I would imagine like politically Kasparov would really hate Kramnik now for being like a supporter of the establishment. Although you almost have to be, you know, if you were like not a supporter of Putin and you're like a Russian grandmaster, like where are you? Like going to Siberia or something? I guess you just keep your mouth shut, you know, and don't make any waves. But it seems like everybody, you know, I don't know. The only opinions I've seen are positive ones from like Soviet Russian grandmasters. Russian grandmasters seem to like Vladimir Putin. Do you have a choice? You know, that's my question. I don't really think so. This is a good move from Shryan, g5, and he's going to fix my pawns on the white squares now. Yuck. That's not what I wanted. But maybe most relevant is this pawn on... The pawn on e4. This is the most relevant pawn here. I can probably live with some pawns on white squares. Shryan now goes bishop e6. He's changing plans. So my plan here was to play b3. He's quickly going after my e5 pawn. Now, what's going on here? All right, first of all, we have enough time to centralize the king. And now, I guess, we play this weird, bizarro endgame. Bishop takes e6. We have this sick pawn structure in the middle of the board. I have to stop him from playing king f5. And there's this perverse pawn structure here. Wow, look at that. He goes rook d5. Oh no. No. If you do take that pawn, Sabo Attila, I will have my revenge in another way. Shryan playing a great game. I feel like I'm playing Sabo Attila all over again. Look at this. He's got counterplay even there. Now what do I do? Rook takes. Do I dare take this pawn? Rook takes check. No, he has two checks. I can't defend. Man, oh man, this is extremely tough. Pawn takes. h5 check. This is unbelievable. I don't know what to do. I mean, I don't know if I can even make progress here. Man, what am I hoping to achieve now? This is like absurd. Okay. Maybe I should just play f3. And he's super fast too. Oh, I have this now. Rook takes e4. Oh no. King d7. Look what I found. I found a lucky move. Here, back. Well, I guess everything's winning. We were pretty lucky here. I'm just assuming this is winning for me, but maybe I made a mistake. E6. E6 is probably a good move. And then F4. Maybe first improve my king. Ooh, trying super fast. Zugzwang. F3. That was a heck of a fight by Cheyenne here. We're going to win everything. Keep him frozen. Alright, nice try, Cheyenne. Nice defense. You should have held the draw. I guess you just don't have to play King d7, and I don't think I can make progress there. That was a hell of a fight. 5 pawns. Yeah, on the e-file. Alright guys, we'll see you later. Thanks for joining me, and we'll be back tomorrow, Friday, with 10 o'clock CET morning stream playing Blitz and Classical Chess. Thanks for joining me. Thanks to Jeroen for his delayed arrival today, and we're glad that he was just here. So again, thanks guys. We'll be back tomorrow. And don't forget to check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube, and PayPal donations welcome. And thanks for all of those of you who have supported the stream and my YouTube channel. We'll be back tomorrow, Sunday simul at 6:30 p.m. or 18:30 CET. 20 players Sunday. Be there here on lichess. Bye-bye.